Daniel Ricciardo is back in Formula One. He will be replacing Nyck de Vries at AlphaTauri, which is Red Bull's second team, effective immediately. He'll be back in the car at the Hungarian Grand Prix. This situation has really developed really in a quicker way than I even imagined it was possible. I didn't think he was going to come back until 2024. It's clear over the past 48 hours or so that things really have changed around. You know, things have really moved in a really good direction for Daniel Ricciardo and in a bad direction for Nyck de Vries. Of course, de Vries has been under so much pressure this season, pretty much from the moment he pulled on a set of AlphaTauri overalls. You know, his pressure, his form has put him under enormous pressure. And Helmut Marko, the man who put him in that seat, Red Bull's motorsport advisor, has been calling him out publicly in a remarkable way, saying just a few weeks ago that Red Bull boss Christian Horner was right to question whether de Vries was the right man. When you've got a guy underperforming as de Vries has been, it's always difficult to replace him. When you have Daniel Ricciardo there in the wings, you know, an 8-time race winner, somebody who most considered to be one of the best drivers in Formula One still, despite some of the struggles he had at McLaren, it's a no-brainer for Red Bull. You know, they were never going to put him back in the top team straight away. Sergio Perez might be under pressure, but at the moment, from everything we've heard, his short-term future at Red Bull is safe. He's got a contract till the end of 2024. Sources close to Daniel Ricciardo have told me that Ricciardo is basically happy to race for AlphaTauri as long as is necessary to prove that he's over the worst of his form at McLaren. He wants to race for Red Bull in the future. He's told me that himself. He told me that last month. He's mentioned it in passing in a few interviews recently as well. And it's clear that he's given up all ambitions of racing at any other team on the grid. And this is the next step. He's going to have to do it in exactly the same way he did it in 2014. He raced at Toro Rosso, which is now AlphaTauri, for a handful of seasons, and then made the jump to Red Bull. He's going to have to do it again if he wants to be Max Verstappen's teammate. But it seems that Red Bull are really happy with this situation. You know, you put Perez under pressure. You remind him that, hey, if your form doesn't improve, we've got this guy waiting in the wings for us. You know, a guy who's hungry, a guy who's taken some time out and has clearly been refreshed by that. So hopefully, you know, they get a much, you know, a renewed performance out of Sergio Perez. That's what they'll be hoping for. But if they don't, I think the future looks really bright for Red Bull. You know, you've got the most coveted seat probably in Formula One right now, most coveted seat since Mercedes were dominating and Bottas was out of form. And Daniel Ricciardo now has put himself in a prime position to be a contender for that. It doesn't mean he's top of their list by any stretch of the imagination. There's lots of drivers who might be in contention if Perez was to leave. But Daniel Ricciardo is right back in the mix now for consideration for that top seat. So great news for Daniel Ricciardo. Bad news for Nyck de Vries. Difficult to see where he goes from here. His stock with Williams is still pretty high. He obviously kind of got that AlphaTauri seat on the basis of one race last year. He deputized for Alex Albon at the Italian Grand Prix in September last year. Got a point there on his debut, and that really elevated his stock massively. Be interesting to see whether he's kind of in contention in a few months' time when it comes to talking about 2024. But this has been a pretty damaging season for him. You know, he's a former Formula 2 and Formula E champion, but very difficult to come back from such a public firing from Red Bull. But other drivers have done it. Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, to name two, who, you know, have gone on to have success elsewhere. So we'll see what happens with Nyck de Vries. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo back on the grid, and this could be the beginning of a remarkable comeback to the senior Red Bull team eventually.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.